The plantation rises in the morning mist, grand and serene to the casual observer. Its gardens are neatly trimmed, its walls freshly painted, its halls filled with the polite clatter of domestic life. But for those who live inside its walls, life is not serene, it is a constant calculation, a tightrope walk along invisible lines dictated by those who hold absolute, hidden power. Not all rulers wielded whips. Some ruled with subtler weapons, glances, gestures, commands whispered behind closed doors, secrets no one dared speak aloud. Among them, the white mistress of the house, elegant, poised, seemingly fragile, exerted a force that shaped lives in ways the public could never see. Young enslaved boys moved quietly through the polished hallways, tasked with duties that kept them in constant proximity to the mistress. They were small, nimble, invisible to outsiders, yet entirely visible to the woman whose household they served. Every movement was scrutinized, every expression measured. Their survival depended on anticipating moods they were never allowed to name aloud, on obeying orders delivered without explanation, on vanishing from notice whenever she required it. For these children, obedience was not a choice, it was survival, and the stakes were absolute. The mistress did not need to raise her voice to dominate. She moved through the house with an air of control that made silence feel like a form of punishment. Her eyes swept the rooms with subtle authority, noting every hesitation, every misstep. A misaligned chair, a dropped dish, a delayed delivery. These were not small mistakes. They were proof that the invisible hierarchy she commanded could be challenged. And in that household, no mistake went unpunished, even when it remained unseen by the master himself. Within the grand halls, fear was cultivated as carefully as the rose gardens outside. Boys assigned to the domestic sphere learned quickly how to read subtle shifts in expression, slight changes in tone, the unspoken signals that preceded correction or reprimand. They became adept at navigating moods that changed as quickly as the sunlight across the floorboards. Favoritism could protect one child while condemning another. Compliance was survival. Resistance could mean reassignment to harsher labor or complete separation from family. Even a small act of defiance carried consequences that rippled through their lives. These lessons were delivered in silence. Conversations with the mistress were measured, often polite, always laden with hidden expectations. Orders were given indirectly, layered with threats that the children could not name aloud. Their world was filled with invisible rules that shifted unpredictably, a labyrinth of fear in which a single misstep could have devastating effects. Diaries later uncovered, hidden in trunks for decades, reveal how meticulously mistresses documented perceived disobedience and how these notes could guide decisions that altered a child's fate. The power she wielded was invisible to the casual eye but absolute within the household walls. Even as the mistress projected refinement and gentility to the outside world, inside the house she ruled with quiet, relentless authority. Her power was psychological, emotional, and strategic. It shaped behavior, bent wills, and demanded conformity without ever being named. The young boys who served her learned the art of silence, the instinct to disappear from notice, the skill of predicting danger in a glance. They endured humiliation, coercion, and manipulation that left invisible scars on their minds and hearts. Yet, despite the fear, stories endured. Whispers among the enslaved preserved the memory of her authority, the unspoken lessons of survival. Elders recounted warnings to the next generation. Avoid her gaze, speak only when spoken to, anticipate her needs before they were voiced. They shared knowledge passed in hushed tones, ensuring that even in silence, the truth could survive. Every child who navigated the household learned a secret language of caution and endurance. And still, to the world outside, the mistress remained an image of elegance and decorum. Her secrets were thought to be buried, her authority unremarkable to those who only glimpsed polished floors and polite smiles. But the invisible chains she forged inside those walls were real, lasting, and devastating. Even decades later, The memories of those who endured her household revealed the full scope of the quiet power she held and the hidden costs borne by those too young to defend themselves. The shadows of the house tell a story that no textbook dared to record. Behind the closed doors, behind the carefully maintained appearances, the mistress exercised control in ways that shaped the lives of the vulnerable in profound, lasting ways. Power in the house was silent, subtle, and terrifying. It was a power that lived in anticipation, in fear, in obedience, the unspoken force that ruled the smallest, most invisible members of the plantation household. And as the sun sets over the plantation, the polished walls hold their secrets. The children who once served in silence have carried those memories into adulthood, their stories preserved in whispers, diaries, and the fragments of testimonies that survived the years. History may have ignored them, but those who lived through it remember the quiet power that could command, terrify, and change a life without ever raising a hand. The night falls over the plantation, and the house that seemed so orderly by day becomes a place of silent tension. Inside, the white mistress moves unseen, her footsteps soft yet full of command. The boys who serve her have learned that every glance, every hesitation, even a breath taken in the wrong moment, can shift the course of their day or their future. Fear here is not loud. It is quiet, constant, and inescapable. It is the weight of invisible rules pressing on small shoulders, the anticipation of moods that can never be predicted, and the knowledge that survival depends on perfect obedience. Life inside the house is a series of delicate negotiations. Young boys carry trays, polish silver, and run errands, all while navigating a landscape where the mistress's expectations are never clearly defined. One wrong look, one misstep, and the consequences are immediate: extra labor, reassignment, or subtle humiliation that will be remembered for days. Lessons in fear are taught not through force alone, but through observation, anticipation, and the meticulous cultivation of psychological dominance. Every boy who served understood that silence was safety, invisibility was protection, and anticipation was survival. The mistress's authority is reinforced in ways that leave no trace for the outsider to see. She manipulates favor and punishment with a precision that ensures compliance without confrontation. One child might be praised for attentiveness, another punished for imagined disrespect. These small acts create a world where the enslaved are constantly watching each other, learning whom to trust and whom to avoid. Trust itself becomes a luxury few can afford. The mistress, though publicly gentle and composed, holds the power to destabilize lives with a single command. Even the male master, who outwardly represents authority, often has less influence in the domestic sphere than the mistress herself. Inside the house, she dictates the flow of work, the distribution of resources, and the behavior of all who live under her gaze. Diaries and household accounts later reveal how she meticulously controlled details, monitoring children's movements, recording infractions, and ensuring her dominance was absolute. The young boys grow up in a world where the unseen hand shapes every step they take, teaching lessons in compliance that will echo throughout their lives. The emotional cost is profound. The boys carry fear, anxiety, and self-doubt. They learn to read invisible cues, to anticipate punishment before it is administered, and to mask their own feelings under layers of caution. Relationships are fraught, as favoritism, jealousy, and manipulation create tension among the enslaved. Friendships are tested. Loyalty is constantly weighed against survival. The psychological landscape is as punishing as any physical labor in the fields, because here, punishment is personal, intimate, and unavoidable. Even in moments of apparent normalcy, the mistress's power permeates everything. A simple errand, a routine task, becomes a test of awareness and obedience. Children navigate a world where failure is measured not by objective standards, but by the invisible, shifting expectations of a woman who holds absolute control over their daily lives. The structure of fear she creates ensures that lessons in obedience are internalized so thorough that the children themselves become instruments of the household's discipline, silently policing one another. Survivor accounts, collected decades later, describe these experiences with clarity. Elders recount how they learned to hide errors, to anticipate moods, and to perform tasks with perfect timing. The psychological scars were deep: constant tension, anxiety, and the haunting sense that they were never truly free. Yet these memories also tell of resilience. The children learned strategies of endurance, subtle rebellion through small acts of defiance, and the power of shared knowledge passed in whispers. Even in silence, survival demanded ingenuity. The mistress's hidden authority challenges the sanitized image of the Southern household. While society celebrated her refinement, education, and social grace, the enslaved understood a very different reality. Her elegance was a mask, her authority absolute, and her power lethal in subtle, invisible ways. Every corner of the house, every polished floor, every locked door was a reminder that control did not always shout. Sometimes it whispered. Measured in the tense air of a room and the unspoken rules, the children had no choice but to obey. As decades pass, these stories, once buried, resurface. Diaries, oral histories, and legal documents provide glimpses into the lives of those who served in silence. The psychological and emotional legacies of the mistress's hidden power ripple through generations, shaping family histories and cultural memory. The lessons learned in the invisible hierarchy of the house: how to survive under constant scrutiny, how to endure manipulation and fear, remain vivid reminders of the subtler forms of oppression that built and maintained the plantation system. The house, abandoned now, holds echoes of that past. Dust settles on polished floors, empty chairs await unseen occupants, and the air seems to vibrate with memory. The young boys who survive carry the invisible scars into adulthood, their stories preserved in whispered recollections and written accounts. The world may remember the mistress for her beauty and refinement, but the enslaved remember her for the quiet terror she commanded, the silent authority that dictated their lives, and the invisible chains they learned to navigate with courage, cunning, and resilience. In the end, the plantation's walls tell a truth often ignored. Power is not always visible, and oppression does not always scream. Sometimes it whispers. And for those who endured it, those whispers carried the weight of fear, survival, and the shaping of lives in ways that would echo across generations. History may forget, but memory does not. The children who lived under the unseen hand of the mistress remember everything, and their stories illuminate the silent horrors of a system built not only on labor but on control, domination, and the quiet tyranny of women whose elegance masked their unyielding authority.